Hello and welcome to the Johnny Gets Cash YouTube channel. This is the latest episode in my series Chop to the Top, where I have been trading my way up from a cheap car to a supercar. So far in this series, you've seen me start with a very cheap Toyota Rav4 that I paid just £150 for. And over the course of the previous 13 episodes, I've been trading my way up and got to a budget of just under £29,000 to buy, restore and sell the next vehicle. And that is where you saw me buy the car in the last episode, that fantastic Mercedes-Benz C43 AMG, a personal dream car, something I really want to get my hands on. So as always with Chop to the Top, in this episode I'm going to begin by giving a full breakdown of costs on that car, on the C43, what I paid for it, what I spent on it and what I've sold it for. So with the help of my trusty book, let's get into those figures now. So as I mentioned at the start of the last episode, I had a budget of almost £29,000. In actual fact, the budget was £28,843.15, and I went out and bought that C43. What did I pay for the C43? Well, with all purchase fees accounted for, I paid £4,729.83 for the car. The delivery fee for the car was £60. Paint materials were £56.38, cleaning consumables were £15, and advertising costs were £79. So as you can see, not a huge list of spends on this car. It didn't need it, it just needed a little bit doing to it to make it fresher and as good as it can be. With that said, that means I spent a total of just £210.38 on the car. Now when you combine that with the purchase cost, it owed me a total of £4,940.21. That's the total for a C43 AMG ready to go, under £5,000. I was very pleased with that. That meant that in the kitty, I still had £23,902.94 left. It was a staggering amount left over, and I had the C43. Well, the Merc has now sold, and it sold for £6,750, which I think is an absolute steal for that car. So everyone was happy, the buyer was happy, I'm happy, I'm getting a small profit, everyone is happy, and that's the way I like to do business. So let's total that up. I had left in that kitty, as I mentioned, remaining was £23,902.94. Now with the sale price of £6,750 on that AMG, that means the total kitty now stands at £30,652.94 moving into this episode. So that's a hell of a lot of money. We've broken the £30,000 mark. I started with a £150 Toyota Rav4 and we're now over 30 grand in the trading budget. So what have I bought? Well, I bought something that might surprise you, and it's sitting just behind these doors. So let's go outside and take a look. So here's what I've bought, a 2001 ROVER 75. Now I know what you're thinking, I've just come off the back of doing a C43 AMG. Why have I been out and bought a 23-year-old old man's ROVER? But bear with me, there is method in my madness, I promise. This car, when I saw it, I knew I had to have it. It's a one-owner car with 66,000 miles on it, completely original. And once again, it's got a huge service history file with it, including, just like the Mercedes, the original bill of sale. And that sort of originality is hard to come by, so I absolutely love cars like this. I'll admit it's not the most exciting car in the world, granted, but a point I've made on this channel several times before, and I'm going to make it again, it's not always about buying cars I personally find exciting or interesting. Sometimes it's about buying cars that I can see a profit in, and in this old Rover I can certainly see a profit. So usual Chop to the Top stuff. I can't tell you exactly what I've paid for it right now. I'll explain all of that at the beginning of the next episode, as I did at the beginning of this episode on the previous car. But what I will say is the money I paid for this car I think was a fairly respectable figure, and one that I can make a profit on. I'll show you around the car now and hopefully you will see what it is that I see in this car. Let's start outside. I'm doing a bit of a walk around now. As you can see, there is actually no issues on the outside that I'm aware of. The bodywork is in fine straight condition, the paintwork all looks good. It's a very bright original old car. As I said, it's 23 years old, but it looks absolutely fantastic for it. The biggest problem I can see, the biggest crime this car has committed, is this rear door handle has got some peeling on the chrome coating, and that is it. That is really it. Now I know it's not an exciting car to look at on the outside. It's not the high spec Connoisseur 75. This is just an SE, so it doesn't have the big wheels or anything like that. But again, bear with me. I can see a profit in this one, so I'm going to try and get you on board a little bit. Let's move inside this Rover quickly and I'll show you in here. Again, this isn't a Connoisseur, this is an SE, so it doesn't have leather. It has got this kind of velour type interior. Now that is probably the most boring interior on possibly one of the most boring cars I could have bought. I know that's what you're thinking, but some people do like this non-leather finish. It's nice and warm year round, etc. The wood effect dash, I know what you're gonna say, it's old man spec, but come on, it's a Rover 75, most of it's old man spec. But people do like these Rovers. I've had a few on the channel in recent months, and honestly, the amount of feedback I've had on them is really good news. Now, I've done probably MGs more than Rovers, but I do think this will sell quite easily because it is, as I say, a one owner 66,000 mile car with a massive amount of history. So what's wrong with it? Well, having driven it a little bit, I can say there's nothing wrong with the driving experience. What I have discovered issues with are the doors, weirdly. So let's start with the driver's door. You probably heard when I opened it then, it sounds a little bit odd. Now, I think someone's been inside this door because in terms of the controls, so the driver's side window works, but it's very slow. Trying to control the passenger, front passenger window doesn't work from this side, and the mirror controls don't work. So I think there's a problem with this control unit or the way it's plugged in or something. Clearly there's a bezel missing off this door handle. So this has been apart, something's not been put back right, so that needs sorting. But more than that, you can hear if I rattle this, something sounds a little slack in here, and that's manifested when you shut the door. If you shut the door normally, it doesn't actually shut properly. The way to get this to shut is shut it gently and then give it a little push and it shuts perfectly. Clearly that's not right, that's something I need to deal with. I'm gonna have to take that door apart, have a look at the mechanism, and at the same time obviously look at the wiring for the controls and see what's going on there. Weird one, but not too much of an issue. Rear door, no problem on this side, apart from the fact it needs a bit of lubrication. Moving around the other side, the rear door on the near side, that is a problem. The one with the crusty handle. It doesn't open from the outside. It does open from the inside, not the outside, so it's kind of like the opposite of having child locks. Into the back of the 75, and it is exactly as you'd expect in here. Very, very straight and up together. Just needs a really good hoover out. It's not dirty as such, but it just needs a bit of a gentle clean around. Now, this is a 2-litre petrol V6 version, so it's not the later V6, it's the earlier V6. And there's mixed reviews online as to which is the one to go for. To be honest, I'm not an expert on Rover 75, so I'm really not sure where to hang my hat there. What I can say is this one has got a fantastic service history and it drives incredibly well for a 23-year-old Rover, that is. So I'm going to just try and promote this as best I can on its positives, which are that it is a very genuine, original and straight car. And by the time I've done those little jobs with the doors and sorted everything out, I will of course also put a fresh MOT on the car. It should hopefully sell relatively quickly. I'm not going to go mad on price, so I'm not going to try and milk every penny out of it. I'm just going to try and sell it to someone who appreciates the genteel nature of the old Rover 75. And I think there's a few old guys out there who are going to like that sort of thing. And I think that's who it will sell to be honest. There's only one other silly little thing I've noticed so far, and it is on these roof rails. Clearly this car has had a roof rack or something at some point. And where the rack bolts in, there should be covers on these receiver nuts. They're missing. Well, that's not a big deal, but it's something I need to get a hold of. So they'll be sorted and put back on. I'm really hoping this is going to kind of be another clean up and sell type job, similar to that Mercedes. I'm not expecting a huge work list on this one, but it hopefully, when it's all done, will be a very attractive prospect for someone. Okay, so I figure now the Rover's in the workshop, I'm going to start with the driver's door, just because it's the most annoying, because it's the one you use the most. Ignition is on. I'll show you what I mean about this driver's side window. It seems to go down without issue, but it feels like it's tight, if you know what I mean, on the runner, because rather than going down automatically each time, sometimes you have to work it. But the real issue comes when you try and put it up. You can hear how tight that gets before it finally stops, and you've kind of got to nurse it up to get it all the way. So I think that regulator is out of line or something is incorrect there. Now to show you, the passenger side doesn't work at all. Nothing from this side. Don't know if you can hear that on my mic, but you can hear the relay clicking over there. And finally the mirrors. If I put right hand adjust, nothing. Left hand, nothing. So that is a representation of the issues I have with this door. Now, I said this bezel was missing. I do have it here in the door pocket, but it looks like someone may have snapped some clips and tried to stick it back on with something particularly gooey. Whether or not I can get that to work properly, I don't know. I'll have to take a view on that in a minute, but for now I don't need it anyway, because I need to take this door card off once again. So first job is to take this door apart. Okay, so now I've got all that loose glass cleaned out of the door. That's a start, but I've decided to have a look at the mechanism on this door, and what I've realised is, initially I thought it was something to do with the catch pin. I don't think that's the case now, actually, to be honest. I've activated the lock with a screwdriver, and what I've noticed is the inside door handle will open it pretty easily, just with a very light, small amount of movement. It will release the screwdriver. And I've checked the other door, the passenger door, and the same can be said for the outside handle of that door. Now the outside handle of this driver's door, when I've got the screwdriver latched in, that won't release it at all, even on full pull. You have to sort of yank it. So I haven't had a look inside the door. I think it's an adjustment issue, so I'll try my best to show you inside the door here. Okay, so we're inside the driver's door, and this rod here is what is connected to the outside handle. If I pull the outside handle, now you can see that moves. The situation basically is that it appears as if the rod is not pushing that white nylon clip down far enough. So to my mind, that's an adjustable element of the catch. That's my theory anyway, so I need to try and figure out carefully how to open up that nylon clip without breaking anything, and then I try my best to show you what I do and the aftermath, but I think that's the solution. Right, I'm a little bit further with this door. I don't want to linger on this too much because I don't want to bore you guys, but basically I think I've got it sorted. I did have a play around with the adjustment of that piece of nylon inside, which is connected to the handle. Essentially what I had to do was remove the handle entirely. You'll notice the car is completely covered in greasy fingerprints at the moment, just from where I've been working. It will get sorted. Anyway, yeah, remove that handle completely. Make sure everything was within adjustment, and it kind of didn't look too bad. And it started working for a split second and then stopped. So a real bit of a head scratcher. What I did notice though, on the catch in here, it was absolutely chocker with grease. Now clearly someone's had an issue with this in the past and just loaded this mechanism up with grease, and over time grit and dirt and moisture and things can all gather and just make a real mess of general purpose grease, which is what I believe was in here. So I've taken that mechanism off, taken it outside, I've separated it as much as I could and thoroughly cleaned it out. Now, I cleaned it with brake cleaner to get all that old grease out, and then I've re-lubricated it with penetrating fluid, so just a lightweight sort of lubricant. And now, the door does seem to latch itself properly every time I shut it, with an easy single pop release. It seems to be perfect. So a combination of poor adjustment on that rod, I think where the door was taken apart before to change that glass, and also this mech being absolutely full of grease, which was full of grit and dirt and horrible stuff stopping it from working properly. You may notice I've got the glass out of this door as well. Something I did pick up on is that with the glass out, I can operate the regulator absolutely fine. It doesn't stick at all. So the regulator is not fouling anything within the door, or is not fitted incorrectly as I originally thought. My problem will lie, I believe, somewhere in the channels where the window's running. Now, whether there's grease and therefore dirt and dust stuck in there, or even little bits of broken glass, because as always with a smash window car, there's little bits of broken glass everywhere. So my next job is clean out the channels, make that window work properly. And then I'm on to the electrical side of the door, making everything work from that driver's control panel, but that will be done after the glass. Right, I'm trying to figure out why this passenger side window is not working. And I've started with the obvious stuff, checked fuses, I've checked continuity from the driver's switch panel to the BCU, which is just behind the glove box there. Everything's looking good. So stripping this door down, the next thing to check is the motor, etc. And I think I might be in some luck here. Rarely does luck strike like this, but I've taken off the membrane as carefully as I can. I'm not sure if you can see it, but without me doing anything, this appears to be hanging in the breeze, and that is the motor. So for some reason the motor is unplugged on this side. Now initially that could be good news, I just plug it back in and everything should work, but it might be that that's been unplugged for a reason. So I'll plug it back in now, test the window, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so first things first, let's plug that motor back in. I mean, it could be that the catch that holds it in place had just slipped for some reason, but we'll get that plugged back in first. Reconnect the switch panel. Right, let's go and flick the ignition on, and then we'll try that. Okay, so ignition is on. Okay, that's why it's been unplugged, I think. The motor is clearly trying to do its job, but that window is either catching on something or the mechanism is really stiff. So I think what I better do, take this membrane off, see if I can drop the window enough just to take it out of the regulator, see if the regulator works. Probably just get the glass right out of the way, check the regulator works as it should. If the regulator works fine, then it's bound to be a problem with the tracking for the window. So the track, it runs up and down and it'll be full of dirt or grease or blocked with something. So that's the next thing to try. Okay, so this is the passenger side window regulator. It all looks in okay condition. None of it's too horrendous, I don't think. Clearly, a few bits have seen better days. This is a 23-year-old car at the end of the day. But unlike some of the regulators I've worked on, the cables haven't snapped or anything. Tensioner seems to be okay. So I think what I'm going to have to do is just give everything a really good clean up and lubricate everything as best I can. So what I'll have to do is put some slave power into the motor fore and aft, just to run it a few times on the bench here. And I think that's about the best I can do. So a little bit of a ghetto power supply set up on the bench here, but I'm really just testing to see if the reg works. And it does. You can see the issue I'm having though looks to be at the top of the travel of this one. So can I figure out why that is? Just fine. This side doesn't seem to be making a fuss. It's just this one here. So if I can ascertain why that is, I can fix it. Not good. Right, I'll take it down again, I'll clean all the tracks and try this again. Okay, so I've tried to use lightweight penetrating oil on most of this, but in a place or two you have to use grease. I'm sort of loath to do it because I don't want any grit and stuff getting stuck in there, but I'm being as sparing as I possibly can. But on that note, having done that, it does seem to be running a lot freer now. I mean, it still crunches very, very slightly, so I'll keep working on it, but it's not as bad as it was before where it's stopping running because of it. So I'll run this back and forth a few times, clean up both rails, and then refit the window and hope for the best. Okay, so after a little bit messing about with that regulator, everything seems to be running smoothly. I've got everything back in, and just to demonstrate. So no horrible noises anymore, everything seems to run exactly as it should, so I am happy with that. Okay, good news, I've got both front doors working properly. Ignore all the handprints on the door cards. This car will be getting properly detailed before it's sold. But in terms of the fix, both mirrors work. They were just a bit stiff through lack of use, I guess. Windows work from independent doors and all from the driver's door, so that's really good news. So now I'm moving on to the back, and I'm gonna start with this noisy door. I'll get that sorted, and then I'll work on the other door, which doesn't open from the outside. Okay, I'm inside the rear door now and I've got the problem sorted. I'll show you what it was. I won't bore you to death with it because it's very similar to what you've already seen, but that rod there is the rod that links the outside door handle to the actual catch mechanism by means of this nylon fastener. Now, you may just be able to see some black ink I've put on it. That black ink was the insertion depth of this rod when I first opened the door. All I had to do was adjust it slightly, so move the rod further up inside that nylon to allow more actuation when I pull the outside door handle. I'll try and show you now. And basically, that means when you pull the handle, it's actually doing something now, whereas before it was speaking to the catch, but it just wasn't doing enough to unlatch it. So that is that job sorted. Let's rebuild this door. Okay, so with the doors all now completely sorted, the car is actually going to go off for MOT. So I've given it a quick pre-MOT check, so bulbs, blades, any play and bearings and bushes, things like that. Make sure it all feels as tight as it should. The reason I'm sending it off for MOT now is because if there's something I've missed or something I'm unaware of and it will fail the car or give the car a serious advisory, I can then work on that sooner rather than later. So that's why this car is going in for MOT now. But before it goes, there's one thing I want to do, just a really silly little thing. On the roof rails I mentioned before, there should be some little caps in these holes just to cover those receivers. This particular one has got some residue where someone's clearly just put tape over it because they've lost these caps. None of the others have got the tape residue, but what I'm going to do now is clean up those rails and I'm going to refit some caps. Silly little thing, but for me, it just seems daft having those missing. So I've got a replacement set and I'm going to fit those now. Okay, you are joining me more than a week after that last clip. The Rover went in for its MOT and only failed on one thing, and that ironically was this rear passenger door. The door that I fixed decided to stop working as soon as I took it in for MOT. That's because that little nylon adjuster in the door just slipped. Anyway, that's now been readjusted and firmly kept in place. So the car is all good. It's been back in for retest and it's passed. No advisories or anything. So really, really good news. Clean sheet pass MOT. That's exactly what we want. Since that point, something else quite drastic has happened as well though. This car has got a massive amount of service history, and I've had a chance to go through that now, and although it has got huge stacks of history with it and all sorts of things have been done to this car and kept record of very well, I couldn't see any reference to the cam belt being done. Now on this V6 there are actually 3 belts, so it's quite an involved job. So to me that's as good as saying it hasn't had a cam belt change. Now I believe these engines are a 90,000 mile interval or 5 years. This car has clearly not done 90,000 miles, it's done just over 66,000 miles, but it is 23 years old, so if nothing else, it's very due on time. Now, it may well have had a cam belt in its time, but I just can't prove it because I don't have the invoice. So, as I just said, it needs to be done, because if I can't prove it, no one's going to believe it's been done. So, I had to have the cam belt done. As you know, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, I don't do really heavy duty mechanical work like internals, cam belts and things like that. So I've sent it off to my usual mechanic to have the cam belt done. Now whilst having that done, I've also had the water pump replaced, because it's one of those jobs you may as well get it done. As mentioned, there's 3 belts on this engine, so that was quite an investment in time. You'll hear about all the costs of that and how much that set me back in the next episode. But for now, at least, I can say that this car has had all its belts changed. It's got a new water pump, and it's one less thing for the new owner to worry about, which I think will really help me come sale time. So with a new MOT and that last bit of servicing done to bring the file up to history, what is next? Well, actually, this car is ready for sale. You may notice it's slightly dusty and a little bit grubby in itself, because it's been away being worked on, and it's just not as good as it could be. So it needs another clean up just to make it look as good as possible before I can do the sales photographs, get the advert made and get it out there on the internet. So that's what I'm going to do next, give this car a clean up and get it advertised. So I'm actually going to finish this video off in a slightly different way for a chop to the top. This car has actually already sold, so I can give you a very quick breakdown of costs and the total kitty moving into the next episode. I did make a profit on the Rover, but it's not as much as I would have liked it to be, basically because there was some unforeseen spends on getting the cam belt done. I'll give you the full breakdown of costs at the start of the next episode, but for now, as the car has sold, I can give you the highlights. So if you remember, I had £30,652.94 at the start of this video. Well, I actually paid £2,089.92 for the Rover, and I spent £795.43 making it as good as possible, which means that in total, the Rover owed me £2,885.35, leaving £27,767.59 in the kitty. Now I have sold the Rover already, as I've mentioned. The Rover is sold for £3,250, meaning the total kitty amount moving into the next episode is £31,017.59. Over 31 grand moving forward. Now I haven't bought another car yet, But stay tuned, because there will be another Chop to the Top coming very soon, which reveals what I've bought and what we're going to move forward with in the series. So if you want to find out what I buy with that more than £31,000 budget, make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell icon so you're notified when new videos come out, and I will show you in the next episode what I've bought. As always, thank you ever so much for watching, and I will, of course, catch you on the next one. Cheers.